Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Today, my guest is Matt Traywick. Matt lives in Southeast Ohio with his wife, 3 children, and service dog, Sierra. Matt and his wife currently own a financial services company, and he served as an Ohio State Trooper for several years prior to working in the financial industry. I met Matt at CognitiveFX and was so impressed with him and his story that I asked if he would share it with us on this podcast, and he kindly agreed. So thank you so much for being with us here today, Matt. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's have you share any more about your background that you want us to know before we jump into the injuries.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear where you're from and things.
Yeah. Grew up in a very rural part of Northeast Ohio. Actually grew up on a dairy farm, hard worker most of my life. Went to college for a while and ended up working my way through school as an industrial electrician. Lost my job at 9/11 when the towers fell. And I felt a really strong calling to serve in the military or law enforcement. And that's why I joined up to be an Ohio State Trooper and did that for several years until I experienced an injury, which then led me to my second career, or third career in this case, as a financial advisor. And beautiful wife, 3 children, service dog, and super happy with my life. Other than the unfortunate injuries that's happened that we haven't been able to control, but I'm so fortunate to have met the people at CFX and our concussion community.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, that's let's talk about that a little bit. So, and I guess in a recent podcast interview that I did, I realized I should probably just throw this out there at the beginning of these to let people know we're going to be talking about some injuries. And so if that's triggering, skip ahead, or if it's too heavy, come back to it later when you're in a better place. But Matt's been through some stuff. And the point of this is to let people know that they're not alone in experiencing things like this, because I think it is important to have that out there and to find the hope and the goodness in it, even though it's been so hard. So if you are ready, we'd love to hear what happened. I know you had 2 injuries, so let's just start at the beginning and
Yeah. So I guess one of the most, I would say one of the hardest injuries that I think in life that I've suffered from. I was an Ohio State Trooper for several years, and I was diagnosed with something called PTSD in 2009. I had no idea what it was. Everyone asked me, well, what causes it? Was there a specific incident, certain trauma? And my answer is, I don't know. Could have been hundreds of incidents over several years. But you just get in this phase where all of a sudden things that are normal are not normal anymore. You respond to a call, a very high speed chase, and your heart rate's like 65. But yet you're sitting still in a crossover and you're not doing anything, and your heart rate's 180 and you feel like you're having a heart attack. They tell you you're having anxiety. And so it's a very confusing, almost like invisible thing that you almost don't believe in at first. And I've had that for 16 years, learned to live with it, years and years of counseling. And I decided to leave law enforcement. At that time, it wasn't very supportive of that diagnosis. And I found my way into insurance and finance. Was a little bit more laid back, office hours, corporate America job, air conditioning, lunchtime, not overtime, not holidays, not weekends. And it was a little bit more low key so that I could process stress a little bit easier. And transitioned, it was hard, but did it fairly well. But fast forward about 10 years after being out of law enforcement, I was in the financial insurance industry. But part of my therapy to deal with the trauma that I experienced as serving as a state trooper and the things that I had seen and had to do, and just the flashbacks and the things that a lot of our guys and women deal with today, I found a group of guys and gals that were just like me. I rode with a motorcycle ministry, rode motorcycles. We rode all over the country, sharing the good news with people. But it was kind of funny, and I don't think it was intentional, but birds of a feather flock together. So a lot of law enforcement guys, military guys, FBI, NSA, guys that worked at the Pentagon, Navy, Air Force, state troopers. We just created this amazing group of people, and we spent a lot of time. And so I think for me, that was super positive. Got us out, got us in different locations, and we could share some of our experiences and not feel weird. You can't talk certain things with your wife or your family or even a mental health professional that's never served in law enforcement. Sometimes they can't relate. That's where I experienced a very bad injury, actually, my first brain injury. I was riding with my ministry. I was in Tennessee. I was stopped at a stop sign and woke up in an intersection. I was struck from behind by a Chevy Tahoe. And initially, I was just told that I had concussion and whiplash. Extremely painful, and it just didn't clear. It didn't seem to get better.
Was this, sorry, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Was that the whiplash and concussion were the injuries that you were diagnosed with? You didn't have any like broken bones or anything from that?
No broken bones. I had severe bruising and, some scratches and contusions, but no broken bones. Immediate headache, immediate like loss of hearing, confusion, just super tired, and of course they rush you to ER, and I can't remember, but something tells me they just did a CAT scan and like x-rays and stuff. And they're like, okay, no broken bones, concussion, whiplash, take it easy. And, being a former guy, like played sports growing up, I was in martial arts, law enforcement, plenty of fights, nose broke. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, good. I'll be good in a couple of weeks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. That's what I was wondering about. Yeah. If that was kind of great, it's just a concussion, right? Like that's.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're trained to think most times, and it just never healed. And I remember one of the worst things I remember about that was my wife was several hours away because I was out of state, and she had to come get me. I was on a motorcycle. Motorcycle was totaled. The frame was cracked. And I remember it took us almost 3 days to get home, and it would have been a 6 or 7 hour drive. I was so sick riding in the car that my wife had to keep pulling over because I just kept vomiting, and I was so sick, and I just couldn't stop crying, and just these overwhelming, just sick, nauseous, horrible feelings. And it was just horrible. And I remember being in a lot of pain in my neck and in my back, but I thought, well, I just got hit, right? And I don't remember specific time frames on this, so please don't quote me on the exact time, but it was quite a bit of time after the crash, I started randomly passing out. I had been dealing with these concussive syndrome symptoms. I was actually, the neurologist diagnosed me with Post Concussion Syndrome, which is a set of symptoms, right, that fit everything I was experiencing. And they said, well, 3 or 4 months, but after we get past the 3 or 4 month window, things should clear up for you. It didn't. It didn't at all. In fact, there were times it seemed to me like it was progressively getting worse. And then it got so bad that I would just randomly pass out and be hauled away in an ambulance. And when I would come to in the ambulance, my entire body would just be shaking like I was having a seizure, but I was coherent. And they said, oh, well, you have PTSD and you probably just had a panic attack. And so it was very, very confusing. You feel like you're losing your mind. Like you have all these medical people saying, oh, it's just a panic attack. And you want to believe that. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to have a head injury.
Yeah. How much do you think that the PTSD was playing into it? I guess it's probably hard to.
Yeah. So like it like triggers each other.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time, but I've learned through over the last several years here of having to deal with things. They trigger each other very, very much so. If you stop and think about it, PTSD is in my opinion, is a disease. It doesn't go away. And there's certain things that can trigger it. Well, when your body goes into a passing out situation or any type of autonomic response with those sympathetic systems, your brain starts to think there's a threat. And when a person with PTSD starts to feel a threat or feel that rush of heart rate and adrenaline, now that starts to bring back flashbacks of when I was in that situation as a police officer. So I think there was a lot of overlap for sure, as far as we have the post concussive syndrome and those symptoms. But what physical and physiological symptoms they were creating ultimately could trigger PTSD kind of at the same time. And then you develop this like fear. Oh my God, if I go out or I go to work, what happens if I pass out? And then it got to a place where sometimes I wouldn't just pass completely out. I would just kind of faint. I would even lose control of my bladder or my bowels. Sometimes I would get this intense ringing in both ears, and then it felt like somebody was just taking their hands and clapping them against the side of your head as hard as you could clap them. And just that pressure and pain alone would almost make you pass out and throw up at the same time. I mean, it was just intense. It was like something I'd never experienced in my life. And it was bad. It was very bad.
But and there wasn't anything in particular that triggered it that you were aware of. It was just, and sometimes the PCS, the post concussion symptoms could fall like.
Yeah. So very early on, I didn't know hardly anything.
Yeah.
And I would go to, where you would think would just be a regular, good hospital. I won't mention any by names because I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but very, very, very renowned hospitals here in Ohio that are nationally well known for things. And, they put me through 9 months of testing. And they're like, yeah, we see a couple things on your MRI, but you're 39 or 40 and, brains change and white matter and things like this. And we think you have what's called dysautonomia. Okay, what's that? And so they explain it to me. But again, it's a definition of a set of symptoms that they can't really explain why are happening. And then I went through long periods of injections in my neck. I was just in so much pain. I would get this intense pain in the back of my skull, and it would radiate up in behind my eyes. And I would lose vision sometimes. And it was just so debilitating. And so I'd go and get these injections in the back of my occiput regions in the back of my head. And it seemed like one time I had one done and it worked extremely well. And the next day didn't work. The other side didn't work at all. You're going to physical therapy and they're doing needling and cupping, and you're going and you're getting massage therapy, chiropractor, ENT. One of the reasons I was having a lot of problems with one of my ears is it actually, when the motorcycle crash happened, it's believed that most of the damage was caused from the impact. Everyone thinks that when you come off of a motorcycle, it's because you hit your head. I had a helmet on, but from what it's been explained to me, it's the impact and the velocity of your head flying forward and then coming back. And then that secondary impact coming off the bike. And I have a hard time remembering all of the steps that actually occurred. And everyone asked me, they said, well, were you knocked out? Did you lose consciousness? I don't know. I don't know. And if you're the one being knocked out, that's kind of hard to determine.
Yeah. When did Sierra come into the picture? Because it sounds like she was part of helping with the...
I'm just going to tell you, divine appointment, divine intervention in my life. In fact, I can't remember the exact time frame, but probably somewhere within a year and a half or so after the crash, I'm having all these symptoms still. I'm going to all these major clinics. I happened to go visit a friend of mine in Oklahoma. I tried to take a trip, a camping trip, and we were together, and we had gone to get some food, and we were riding in my truck, and he has a service dog. My friend is a combat veteran and suffered some injuries at war, and has a service dog. He has a brain injury. And we're riding back from getting this pizza, and I'm driving, and his dog just like keeps lifting my arm up, and she keeps sniffing the side of my ear, and he's getting frustrated with her. Get back in the back, sit down. Within minutes, I remember being pulled off the side of the highway, and my friend's holding me up over a guardrail, and I'm throwing up, and I'm almost passed out. And we get back to the hotel, and he's like, dude, I'm not a doctor. He's like, but I've seen a lot in combat, and I have a brain injury, and this dog does not alert to anyone like that but me. And I think you need to ask some more questions. And it was at that time he was so adamant that he wanted to help me, because I mean, I was just in tears. I couldn't even drive home. I didn't know what to do. So he calls and he says, can I, help get my friend a service dog? And his diagnosis right now is just PTSD and post concussive syndrome and possibly dysautonomia. And they denied me because I was not a military veteran. I did not have a DD-214 to provide to this nonprofit organization. And they do these dogs because they get funding from the Department of Defense. So I get back halfway home, and I get a call from the director, and he says, hey, it just so happens we found you a dog. Can you come back? And he says, your diagnosis, and he said, I don't know what the doctors think by just telling our guys they have PCS or post-concussive syndrome, but in our world, that's a traumatic brain injury, and your PTSD definitely qualifies. And we do get some private donors, and you'll be the first law enforcement veteran that we sponsor. But if the dog takes you, we're going to help you.
Oh my gosh.
And I get there, everyone has a lab. And there's this white German Shepherd, and she's absolutely gorgeous. I've always had German Shepherds growing up, but they were brown and black. And there's two white German Shepherds, and they're sisters. And the one just comes running right up to me, and she sits down, and she just wagging her tail. And she immediately sniffs behind my leg. And so I sit down in a chair, and I'm petting her. And then she immediately comes up, and this dog is 5 months old. And she sniffs in my left ear, which was damaged in that first crash. I had to have reconstructive ear surgery, and I have a tube in this ear. And she licks my ear and lays down. And the director goes, I think this is a match. And it's so cool. Like, I can't explain the science behind all of it. But what I can tell you is they train them, and it's an all veteran run organization. And it's other people like me that have similar brain injuries and PTSD that start with these dogs up to 5 months. Then if they bring in the patient and they match the patient with the dog and how it's trained. So if you're a severe diabetic or you're an amputee, that's a different dog that they would assign that's trained in that. So that's how I got Sierra. Very, 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 very long, extensive. We trained for a year and a half together before she got her full certification. She assists me with mobility, mental health, symptom awareness. She alerts 10 to 15 minutes on average before I have what I call an episode. And that episode oftentimes starts with my ears ringing. Then they start throbbing, sometimes loss of vision, panic attack type feeling, heart racing, sometimes loss of bladder or bowel control. Lately, we'll get into this maybe later, after my second crash, I'm losing feeling in my legs and my feet. And what'll happen is if I'm in a chair, she'll come up and she'll actually stand in front of me so that I can't get up. And if I do fall, and this has happened probably 2 or 3 times since I've had her. This has happened when I was on the toilet, and she'll actually break my fall so I don't hit my face off the sink or the tile.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
That's absolute. Amazing. And at this time, I still, again, it was not getting the professional help that I should have gotten with this type of symptom. And I will share this with you because I think I cannot be the only person. But after the second specialty place I had been to try to get answers, they're like, we need to do a psychological exam. I'm like, okay. And it's called a neuropsychological exam. I'm like, okay, I never had that. And it's this long thing, but I remember having a psych exam to get into law enforcement, and they do lie detector tests, and it's constant ongoing stuff. Mm-hmm. And they come back and they go, well, you have PTSD, and you do have a panic disorder, and you have some minor depression. Like, thanks. I agree with all of that.
Surprise.
But please, and I actually asked him, I said, is it possible, like, am I becoming like paranoid schizophrenic? Am I getting dementia? Is there some underlying thing that maybe I feel crazy. Like I can't control my thoughts. They're like, no, we've actually ruled all of that out. And I said, so there's not like some pill you can give me? And they said, no. And unfortunately, over the course of 4 years before I found CognitiveFX, I think I went through at least 2 or 3 of those types of exams, and every single one, same thing.
Yes.
And then they try to give you antidepressants, and they try to give you pills to help you sleep, because that's a problem with this too. You don't sleep. And I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. But none of it worked. In fact, they made me really, really, really sick. 2 of the prescriptions they gave me that were antidepressants, and I can't remember what the other one was. I actually almost went into cardiac arrest, and luckily I live a mile from our hospital here. Yeah. Yeah, the medications thing is, I mean, they can be very wonderful. They can be scary too. So it's, that's so hard. I want to, for a second, just jump back to Sierra for a sec. Can you tell us what the name of that organization is in case? Yes, I would love to. I'd love to. It's called Honoring America's Warriors. Okay. Honoring America's Warriors, and they're in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And they primarily are geared for Oklahoma. They were established there. Luckily, I have an amazing friend who's from there, and I kind of had an in. Who vouched for me and he's just an amazing Christian man, and just, it'll bring me to tears to keep talking about him, but very successful, very, very successful program. I've been around dogs my whole life. I grew up on a dairy farm. We had Australian herders. Like, I've been through different scenarios in law enforcement where we've used drug dogs and bomb dogs, and I've seen a lot of dog training. And I think the key is on why I believe it's so successful is you have broken people like us that are training and paying it forward for the next broken person that needs help. It's the best way I can put it. The dog doesn't know any different, really, right? That's beautiful. I will throw out there, though, I feel like all of us are broken to some degree. We all are, but I love that those dogs are trained so well for that specific type of broken. Yeah. Like, and they trained them to like alert like several of the guys, some of the Vietnam era vets that were in my class, Agent Orange exposure, they're diabetics, neuropathy, they alert to that. There was another really, really good guy in my class, very decorated combat veteran, who lost most of his limbs. His dog's actually trained to go over and open a refrigerator and retrieve items for him. She opens doors for him. This is some of the most amazing things I've ever seen. It's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I don't know, like, sounds like it's been life-saving for you. You said that there have been a couple of times where she's been very, very, very helpful for you. Yes. I love that we're getting that out there so that people can be aware that that's a possibility. So yes, thank you for that. Let's fast forward to the next. You found CognitiveFX. You said about 4 years out. Yeah. What was? Yeah, it took me a while because I'm self-employed, So health insurance things for self-employed people, that is never easy.
Yep.
We had lost our health insurance and had to go on Marketplace, which then forced me to use another doctor. And this was also a pretty well-renowned university, and they're really good at football. And long story short, they saw me a few times, and they get a new doctor into physical medicine and rehab who's supposed to be a brain injury specialist doctor. And he looks at me, he's like, I can't do anything else for you. And I just cried. And I said, that's not acceptable. And he goes, well, you can't just keep asking and asking and asking questions expecting a different answer. And I said, well, you don't know Matt Traywick. I'm going to figure this out because I know something's not right. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. And I spent weeks Googling my symptoms, tracking them, logging them, the times, if there was any triggers. And I was getting like a couple hits on the triggers, light and sound. And it seemed as though if I was in a crowded place or a noisy restaurant, it was really bad. And so then I start Googling overstimulation and light sound. And I don't remember the exact words I put in Google or if I asked Siri, but CognitiveFX appeared in my search query. And I started reading about it. I'm like, oh, this has got to be a gimmick. Their website is too well done. And there's just no way. And, you know, I was extremely skeptical. And the straw that broke the camel's back, I had a complete, I don't know what you want to call it, just complete breakdown. A complete could not breathe, nervous breakdown, made my wife stop the car. And literally, I got out of the car on the interstate and could not stop crying and just didn't know what to do with my life. And it was at that point, my wife's like, you're calling. It's a free consultation. You have been to, I don't know how many different doctors. You've been stabbed in the neck. I don't know how many times with needles. We've spent thousands of dollars we didn't have. We took out a second mortgage on my house for some of the treatments. And I called. And within 10 minutes of talking to Dr. Fong, I started crying because I'm like, this lady has not even seen my medical records. And I'm just telling her what my symptoms are. And she already understands me more than anyone I've met with in 4 years. She didn't have records from any big major hospital. She didn't have copies of CDs to look at my brain, but she got me, and it scared me bad.
Really?
It freaked me out. And my wife and I actually prayed that morning before we got on the phone with her. And we said, God, you need to make it adamantly clear what we need to do from here. And within 15 minutes of the conversation, I knew exactly I needed to go. The only stumbling block was how do I pay for it? And it was very expensive. And then how do I get there? Because I can't travel real well anymore because I get sick in a car.
Yep.
You know, then what do I do with my service dog? I've never had her on a plane. Now she's trained. I know she can get on it, but like, what do I do about that? What if I have an episode in the airport? Like, what if? And I really, really want my wife there, but we can't afford to take her there too, because we can't afford 2 plane tickets. Plus we have 3 kids and, you know, we have a business to run. Someone has to do it. So I'm sure a lot of our people in this community, like, they're probably freaking out right now when they listen to this because they're like, oh my God, that's totally us. That's exactly the problems that we have too.
Yes, absolutely. So how did you get there? Because I know you got there.
Yeah. Well, I borrowed money. And I borrowed money and I prayed because I got thinking, I'm like, all right, if I get out here and this doesn't work, now what do I do? And so I got there, went by myself, which is super hard when you have a brain injury and you have vision issues and things like that. But the very first person I encountered was Kayla at the front desk. She was working that day because I actually got there on a Saturday and they did my MRI on a Saturday. And I met Brian. Awesome. Super comfortable. Just amazing people. Brian made me feel so comfortable. I'm claustrophobic, But the way he had me set up in the machine, like I didn't even realize I was in a machine. I kept my eyes closed until it was time to look at the screen. And it was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience. And I was still extremely skeptical. I'm like, okay, so I'm scheduled for therapy on Monday, but I haven't even seen my scan yet. What if my scan's normal and I show up Monday and I pay a bunch of money? Like, I just wasted money, right? Or what if they just tell me I'm crazy, So anyway, everybody's just tremendous. And then I start running into people at the clinic, other patients that are like saying the same things that I'm struggling with. I'm just kind of listening. And then I see my scan and I cried and I couldn't stop crying. And I couldn't stop crying for two reasons. One, it was really bad. And two, I felt validated. So it was great. Not great that I was there, but the process of figuring it out was awesome. And I believed it. And I was like, and there's no way you can't believe it, because when you start looking at what each of the little circles stands for, I'm like, those are the problems I'm having. And I didn't even tell you guys I was having those problems. Right? So you got to believe it.
Yep. That's amazing. So was it, and through the treatment there, like your experience there, did you feel like it made a difference? It was like,
yes, top notch, A+, 5-star. Every single person that has a job there, from your MRI tech to your office people to your, credentialed professionals, freaking awesome. Everybody had an awesome personality. And I'll tell you this too, was the hardest thing I've ever been through. It's not easy because I wanted to push myself, because I wanted to get better for my kids and for my wife and for my clients. And I did. By day 3, well, I'd say the first couple of days, oh my, I got sick. I thought they were going to have to haul me off to a hospital. I was throwing up. I had accidents in my pants. Like, I started crying, couldn't stop crying. I couldn't hear. But by like day 3, there was like this sliver of hope. I had the most vivid dream that I've ever had since the crash. It was clear, and it wasn't a flashback. It wasn't a nightmare. I dreamt about my wedding. I dreamt about the birth of my child. I dreamt about Sierra. I dreamt about my grandparents and growing up on the farm. And I could remember the dream. And I couldn't remember stuff before. And so I started seeing these things, and then I go through a session of cognitive therapy and then just feel like somebody beat me in the head with a hammer, and I have a migraine and I'm sick and just feel down and tired the rest of the day. But then I woke up the next day and I started feeling like, oh, wow, I have a little more energy today. So those were just some subtle things that I noticed while I was there.
I love that. And I love the thing that you mentioned too about the other patients that were having similar, like,
oh yeah,
I think I love seeing that when I go into the clinic, just to see the validation and it's almost like group, I don't know, like support group stuff going on in there. Like people
way better than support group, because you can see them struggling and you can see them limping around and getting sick and crying, and I remember, won't mention any names, but there was a lady that was there from Korea, and I'm just hugging her. She's bawling, and I'm just comforting her as we're sitting in the patient lounge, and then you turn around and there's somebody like 2 hours from my hometown that's there. There's somebody from New Zealand there. There's somebody from Denmark there, and they're all having these weirdo symptoms. And it's like funny, you're sitting at lunch, you're like, hey, how many people's had a psych exam? And everybody starts laughing and they throw their hand up, because everyone's been made out to be just, it's in your head. It's crazy. This can't be real.
Yep.
So a lot of camaraderie, and I miss those people. In fact, I'm still in contact with several of them.
I love that. I remember the week that I met you there. That was the second time I think that you were there.
Yeah.
I could feel it. I could feel good vibes there. Like all of the people were like really,
yeah,
it was cool. I love that. So tell us a little bit about what happened. What happened next?
Yeah. So got back home, and I'll be honest, very tough transition with my injury. And I can't speak for everyone that has a TBI, but with my injury, I've noticed I have to have structure and I have to have boundaries and limitations. And I also have to have somewhat of a schedule to keep myself on.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any bit of change to that, I can't adapt well. Like when even when the weather changes, I can't, it just screws me up. So coming back home was extremely hard because I kind of just like got thrown right back into the business, and all of these clients are calling in, and I have a job that requires a lot of thought, deep thought, not just memorization of stock prices and PE ratios and estate planning, but it's just like a planning process that your mind has to put together. And then in your mind, you have to remember that person. Well, I started noticing, I'm like, wow, I think I know who this person is. And then it got to a point where I'm like, well, I know they drive this kind of car. And then that would trigger their name for me. But what I found out is that my brain was taking 5 steps to do what it used to do in one. And I was recognizing that because I was educated like that at CFX, that it does try to rewire itself. So I had a lot of change. I was getting back into my physical therapy. I was doing my interval training, working out, starting actually good days and bad days. And as Dr. Spangler says, sawtoothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't freak out when I would have a bad day, or I would have like almost like a passing out episode, because I would just hope and pray that tomorrow will be a sawtooth day and I'll feel awesome. And a lot of times that would happen for a few hours at a time. Well, I didn't get much time. About 3 weeks after being home, I left here at 2:00 in the afternoon to go pick up my daughter from school, and I got hit head on at 60 miles an hour. Guy came left to center and struck me head on. Sierra, my service dog, and I were in the truck. I don't think they have the final results, but it was alleged that he was intoxicated. Witnesses said he was leaving around before he hit me. It was a bridge. There was nowhere to go. I did everything I could to try to avoid the crash. I knew I was going to die. And thank God, the Lord spared my life. Unfortunately, the man that hit me died, and I was life flighted. And the most traumatic part of that incident wasn't just seeing it, feeling it, and all the trauma, but the whole left side of my face, I can feel it, and it's just super swollen. And I'm like, oh dear God, I have a brain bleed, or I'm dying, and I can taste blood in my mouth. And I remember carrying my service dog, like getting her out of the truck, and I'm like, she's alive. And I didn't have a leash on her, and she's just standing right there with me on this bridge with all these strangers and these ambulances and everything. And I remember telling them that we couldn't take off in this helicopter unless my dog comes. And I had forgotten all of that at the time. But then after I'd been at CFX and I'd been doing some therapy and some time has come by, I'm starting to remember more details about things. I remember fighting them, not like physical fighting, but just argumentative and not wanting to be restrained. But I've learned from being at the clinic that other people that's been in these accidents, that's actually a side effect when you have a brain injury, is that sometimes you get combative and confused.
Yeah.
And I just wanted my dog, and I gave her a command, and she jumped into the back of the ambulance and rode with me to the helicopter pad. And I don't know how I was conscious at all, because they had all kinds of things pumping in my body. And then the helicopter got there, and of course she couldn't go. My wife got there at the time, and they flew me. But here's the thing. You fly in, and I kept in and out of like knowing what's going on, not going on, knowing what's going on, not going on. Just remember being in a lot of pain. And I remember looking up at the sky in the trauma room, and I'm awake in the trauma room, and I see this big light. And I think, okay, am I dying and going to heaven? Because this is the brightest light I've ever seen in my life. But then they're like ripping your clothes off and cutting your shirt, and then you can hear other people screaming, and it's like, I'm alive. That guy next to me screaming, I'm alive. Like, I'm here. I don't know how, but I'm here. But am I going to die before my wife and my parents or whoever's going to come, or my brother, before they get here, because it's like a 2-hour drive. I flew there in a half an hour, but am I going to die before they get here? And then your brain just goes berserko. You start thinking about trauma pieces, because that's when the PTSD kicks in. And then they, come in and they tell me you have a closed head injury, but we don't see any like bleeding. You're not dying. There's no broken bones. Your arm looks really nasty. And we know you have some jaw pain and things, but there's no broken bones. And we've had 5 other traumas today, Mr. Traywick. You need to go ahead and leave. So I come home, and that next following week, not just seeing my normal physician, but having a conversation with her. And I don't remember this. My wife did all the talking, but having a conversation with her, and she's like, he's going back to CFX as soon as possible.
Wow.
And she got with Dr. Fong and got me back in. The crash was in February, and I think I got there somewhere in April, because they wanted a good 6-week period for the brain to kind of heal what it's going to heal before they try to diagnose anything. So
wow.
I came back, frequent flyer number 2. I had some wonderful, amazing people with my church and my family that helped get up enough money for us that they flew me first class so that I had extra leg room and I wasn't as stressed, and they bought me noise canceling headphones to wear in the airport.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's when I got to meet you there was.
Yeah. I was there 3 weeks the second time. There was a lot to work on.
Yeah.
But amazing experience again. Awesome people again.
Mm. And how are you doing? I know that's, tell us.
Yeah. So, it's not always a song and dance with this injury. It's very complicated. To be quite honest with you, this morning was absolutely horrible for me. But I did some brainwave therapy. I got something to eat. I came in the air conditioning, worked on a few things. And now that I'm putting forth talking to you in hopes that maybe some little thing that we say today might save someone's life, gives me hope and gives me strength. And I will tell you that it's been the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life, because I know I'm different, but I don't always realize it, because in my mind, I'm still 25. I'm not 43. And I can still cut wood and cut my own grass and go all day long, but I can't. Mm. And my kids have seen me cry. My kids have seen me have mental meltdowns. My kids have seen me have seizures. My little girl sits in the back seat and says, "Okay, Daddy, we'll just go through the drive-through, because sometimes I know you don't do good in crowded places. And I don't want you to get overstimulated, Daddy. Put your headphones on." So that part has been extremely hard. And the other part is all of your friends and your family and your clients, if you're a professional or, people you work with, getting them to understand that you're seriously injured. Like, I can walk and talk for the most part, and I kind of look the same, right? And one nice thing about the crash is it didn't take away my sense of humor. And so I can still make people laugh. But seeing their interaction with me is hard. And one of my deficiencies that was on my report, and I'll share this, is understanding facial expressions and expressing feelings. That has been something I never had a problem with my whole life, and now I do. So I jump around topic to topic. I don't read people right sometimes. That's super challenging. The hopeful thing is this: I'm not the only one that has this injury in the world. And we have a great community of people. So I still have a lot of friends from the clinic that call me. I still meet with Dr. Spangler on a regular basis to work on what I can. I have a dietitian and a nutritionist that calls me every week. My wife is extremely supportive. She's mandated a schedule for me so that I can get in those things that I can try to get in. And then you just have to accept, when you have a crappy morning, you have a crappy day, that tomorrow that might be at the peak of your sawtooth. And then you just have to accept Today you're here, tomorrow you might be here. Maybe, maybe not. So there's my hope. And I also have this deep down desire. I want to help as many people as I can understand this and let them know that I think God's just given you a different purpose. You know, hey, I was an electrician. I was a state trooper. I was a financial guy. God can make me into something else. And I think whatever that is, but he's made me a better dad. I spend more time with my kids. He's made me a better, much better. Well, my wife's ready to strangle me sometimes with some of my symptoms, but I've become a much better husband after we experience it. And there's not one person that you'll meet that has a brain injury that they're not all going to be the same. And you're not going to have that one person that isn't going to be able to tell you and say they know something's wrong with them. And the other thing, it's usually 99.9% some kind of trauma or illness that they've experienced and they had no control over it, right?
Yeah.
So learning to accept that we don't control what happens on planet Earth brought me closer to God, and I thought I was strong in my faith, but my faith is overrunning at this point. And there's days like this morning, I'm running on faith. And you have to have a system, and that system has to have a hierarchy. And if you don't believe in God or Jesus Christ, you've got to have something to understand that there's some kind of good left on this earth that keeps it from completely imploding, right? All these bad things happen to good people for who knows why, but somewhere God's in it. And once you understand that, and then you hopefully pray that you have such support in your life. And I'm loving what you're doing here with this group. It needs to happen because we're misunderstood.
Yes, and I think that's so key to have you share what you've experienced. I think will be such a blessing to people who hear it, because then they will, one, I feel like a little bit of understanding goes a long way towards helping people have empathy. Like if you know what someone's going through, and even if they don't know you personally, just being aware that someone out there is dealing with something like this and you can't see it. Like you never know what people are dealing with. Like just that and alone, if more people can get that, then the world will be a better place. So
yes, the brain is so smart and it's so complicated that you might be able to get up one day and do something. You're like, oh, wow, I must be better. But then 6 hours later, you can't do it. You can't even pick up a screw off of a counter without dropping it in the sink. And it used to be I'd just crawl under there and fix the sink and I'm done in 10 minutes, right? So I think the problem is that a lot of us, we don't want to accept that we have this problem. We don't want to accept it. And then we have a tremendous amount of guilt. And then we have a tremendous amount of grieving process. It's like a death.
Yeah.
The old you died. You're going to mourn. You can't do the things that you once did. You're not the same Matt Traywick that you were months ago. And you have to get that in your mind and accept it. And then you go through this grieving process and you're so angry. Why did that guy come left of center on me? Why did the lady hit me at the stop sign? She said she saw us stopped at the stop sign. Why? And then why don't people have insurance? I have to have it. You have to have it. And then whatever someone's situation is. So you've got all that built up inside your body and you can't deal with it because now your brain can't process the feelings to deal with it. So this group is so important because you're not crazy. Everyone's emotions are dealing with it a different way because there's thousands and billions of different pathways in a brain. Mm-hmm. Mine might have jumped 4 places and the other person with a brain injury might have jumped 3. So we're going to have a different response. Mm-hmm. But we're not crazy. And at some point, the world is going to recognize that this is a lot bigger problem than what we've made it out like people think it is.
Yeah. Quote unquote, just a concussion, right? It is. That's not. Yes. And I agree. Like letting people know, I think is so important. Would you share with us any other things that you have found to be helpful on that emotional journey, or like to help with the symptoms or to help with the emotions and the grief, or like anything that you think would be helpful for people to know that has helped you?
Yes. You can't always talk about it with your significant other because they're hurting probably worse than you are because they love you and they hate seeing what you're going through, and they see what you're going through every day, right? They see the bad, they see the good, they see the stuff that no one else sees, right? They see their grown husband sitting on the floor in the bathroom crying because he can't remember where he's supposed to be that day, or that he forgot his kid's birthday. That's what happened to me. And it breaks a man down. And so you need to meet with a professional if you can. And I would highly recommend a trauma counselor, someone that specializes in trauma and brain injury and understands the functional neurology of it, not just, oh, here's 79% of our injuries don't show up on a regular MRI, right? So we have to have a level of professionalism involved. Okay, if you're not an accountant, most people have a hard time doing their taxes, so they go get an accountant, right? This requires professional help, and don't be embarrassed to get it. And if you go through 2 or 3 sessions with that mental health professional, and all they want to do is keep running you through psychological exams and start giving you antidepressants, I would say get another opinion. Get a 4th opinion. Get a 5th opinion, because modern medicine, that's what their book tells them to do. This hasn't been completely accepted yet. I will also tell you, if you can exercise, even if it's for 15 minutes and do the interval training, do it. Being outside, my vision therapist has me doing light therapy. So I have these special sunglasses, and just being outside in the sun, the vitamin D. I've seen a drastic change in I had a lot of gastrointestinal issues after the crash, and I still do. But I've seen a huge change in some of that working with a professional nutritionist or dietitian, which, can be found. They do exist, and you can meet via the web. You don't have to show her your belly on the webcam. But the right food. I thought this was crazy, but when I was at CFX, I kept telling them, I'm having horrible nightmares. I'm having horrible sleep. And they're like, eat some ice cream. I'm like, well, I'm lactose intolerant. Okay, eat an avocado and put some salt on it. It's high fat content. Eat it before you go to bed. So I did. And I slept a little bit. Just knowing what goes into your body can affect that big time. Another huge thing that has changed for me. I'm not embarrassed to admit I could drink my fair share of alcohol in the day, especially, being in law enforcement. It's extremely stressful, and I found myself trying to medicate before coming to CFX with alcohol because I couldn't sleep and I couldn't understand why I couldn't sleep, and the flashbacks and the nightmares about the crash and just seeing the death and seeing all that. Stay away from alcohol. When you have a brain injury, it doesn't work, at least in my case. And if it does work, you get up really, really super sick for the next day or two. Stay away. Just don't. Caffeine, no Red Bulls, no Starbucks. That triggers things for me. And a lot of people at the clinic, it did. I ask a lot of people about that. And same with the alcohol. There's some tips. And then also take breaks. This sounds really, really crazy, but just for example, if you do get sick in a car, which a lot of us do, maybe drive 20 miles, 30 miles, stop. Just get out. Walk around your car a couple times. We've done that. That's helped. The other thing we do too is my wife sets a timer to make me eat. A lot of us with this injury forget to eat, or our appetites are so screwy and messed up. So we have timers, and when she cooks, she prepares enough to leave a leftover for the next day for me. And there's days when my timer goes off, I'm like, I'm not hungry, but I still force myself to eat something, and that has helped tremendously.
Oh, this is so helpful. And yes, amen to everything you're saying. All of this is so good. I'm so grateful that you're putting it out there. Yeah. And it's just so real and raw. And this is your reality. This is what you found to be helpful. I really, really appreciate you sharing these things. I think.
Yeah. And don't give up. Don't give up. I have PTSD. I've lost a lot of friends to suicide. Strong men, very, very, very strong men, much stronger, tougher, cooler guys than Matt Traywick. And they lost their life because they were misunderstood and they couldn't understand the thoughts in their head. And then you throw 2 brain injuries on top of that. And I have 9 herniated discs in my spine. I have a bone marrow injury. I have a hole in my eardrum. Like, I have problems with my jaw now. I have sleep apnea. Like, I forget. I think it stopped somewhere around 15 different diagnoses. And don't give up. Don't give up, because if you give up, then it's going to be that much longer until the world figures out how to make this situation better. Because every advocate, which you're an advocate, and everyone that has this injury should be an advocate, every advocate we lose puts us that much further behind in our mission and in our research. And this will get fixed one day, and it's going to be linked to Alzheimer's. It's going to be linked to PTSD. You're going to see sports injuries, boxers, martial artists. You're going to see it all linked, and you're going to see it all linked to diseases and cancers and a lot of bad things. That's Matt Traywick's opinion. And I think the brain is an amazing thing, and it hides a lot of stuff well, and we still function half what or part way. And everybody says, "Oh, you're good. Shake it off." A little part of you dies. So there's my advice. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Love it. And I think, I think that's such good advice, all of it. And you're right. I think it is way, way, way more common than we realize. And the effects of it are way more far reaching than we realize as well. I definitely agree with you on that. Well, you mentioned this a little bit, but if you have any other thoughts that you want to share about lessons you've learned and ways that you've maintained hope through this, I'd love to share that.
Lessons I've learned is don't carry yesterday in your pocket. The injury happened. It's over with. Nothing you could do different. Okay? So try not to do that. Try to wake up every day as a new day. And sometimes you might not know what day it is when you wake up. So I have what's called a remarkable tab, very similar to an iPad. In fact, I found out about it from the clinic. And part of my injury, bright lights and things I can't do. The remarkable tab has no backlight to it, and you can use the pen and you can write. You can also type. And so I've used it to journal, and I've also used it as a to-do list. And what I do is I call it planning and posting. So in the morning, I try to get up. I try to realize where I am for the day and kind of what's going on. Maybe if I can get my workout in, I only do 15 minutes in the morning and get that blood flowing. And then I'll go and I'll pray. And then I'll get my little remarkable tab and I'll look at my to-do list. And whatever I didn't get done yesterday, I kind of look for today, and I look at my schedule. And then I cross things out, and then I try to prioritize them. And Dr. Spangler's been great with helping me with these things. And then a lot of times, here's what I find out. I always have 10 things on my list, right? I might only get 1 or 2 done. And then there's days I don't get any done. And I have to say, okay, it's cool. You had a bad day. It's on the list. It's on the list. It's going to get done. It's already on the list. Go to sleep, right? And then posting is at the end of the day, I'm kind of smoked, right? Like a little goofy, a little silly, just your brain's smoked. But I'll sit down with my tab and I'll look through and I'll say, okay, maybe I ought to look at this tomorrow, or what about this? And I'll journal some things. So I do a planning and a posting. And if I end up having to go to bed at 2:00 in the afternoon, I try to do that so that I can sleep rested at night, because I can't keep my thoughts straight and I jump all over the place knowing it's on the list.
I love that. So wise, so good. That's really helpful. So remarkable tab, like it's a tab.
It's just called the Remarkable. I think they're actually made in the UK. I can't remember the exact price. $500-$600 you're probably going to have in it, like you would an iPad. But I love it. Awesome. But I'm also older. Like the younger crowd, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this thing, you can only type on it." You can upload files to the cloud and you can upload stuff to your computer and things like that, but there's no internet on it. And so that's the other thing I find refreshing for me. so often we have our phone. Well, like it hurts my eyes and I get sick sometimes. And then you'll get a notification. Oh, well, let's look at Facebook. Oh, let's look at this. Oh, did I put my Amazon order in? This, you're just looking at what's right here in front of you, and take your thought and write it down before you get distracted by something else and then you forget. That's what happens to me. I can't hold on to my thoughts. It's like I get them and I'm like, I gotta hurry up and say it or I forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. That's really helpful. Thank you. And as we're wrapping up here, I want to say thank you for sharing this, for being so open. And I love your heart. You have, it's a beautiful thing. But I remember when you were in the clinic, you were talking a lot about your law enforcement brothers and sisters, and you had a strong passion for them. Is there a message that you would like to share with them before we end here?
Yeah. Hang in there. Help's coming. And we were always taught to take care of one another. And if you're willing to take a bullet for your brother or your sister, or you're willing to sacrifice your life for people you don't know, then you should be willing to lay down your lives for the men and women that are suffering from these invisible diseases. And when I say that, primarily I mean PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And for me, one thing that I'll share is that it doesn't go away. You can't mask it with alcohol. You can't mask it with anything. And if you get to this place where all of a sudden you've been in law enforcement or you've been in the military for a while and you feel different, there's probably a reason. And for me, I would notice I was really super calm in very stressful situations, whether it be, a shooter or a chase. But then when nothing's going on, I was going out of my mind and my heart rate was through the roof. So my message to them is, if things are changing in your world and you're starting to have bad thoughts and you feel like your entire world is caving in, go talk to somebody and don't be afraid to, because there's plenty of us old beat up guys that served way back when it wasn't accepted, that have your back. So that's the first thing I'll say. And I do know that a lot of brothers and sisters experience traumatic brain injuries and don't know they do. Being hit in the head by a suspect. I mean, training, being tased and getting knocked out. I mean, they're being shot. I mean, there's so many, being in a car accident, pit maneuvering a suspect. They may have a brain injury. So I encourage people to not be embarrassed and reach out. And it's so hard always being the one saving other people to ask for help, but just ask. You have to take the first step. And that's my message.
Is there I think that's perfect. Thank you. Is there a place or a person or like anybody in particular that if somebody was like, I don't even know who to reach out to, what would you tell them?
I would. Now I've seen a lot of nonprofit organizations that support and have clinics and even camps for specifically law enforcement and first responders. The military has VA and they've gotten a little bit better. But in my opinion, I like some of these nonprofits because they're in it to not make a profit. So they're there to fix something or have a mission and support. Just like the agency with my service dog. They didn't have to help me, but they changed my life. They saved my life. So there are several organizations out there, and I'm sure that if you Google, PTSD help for law enforcement officers, I would reach out to them. I feel that we are not in a place in society necessarily, unless it's a company policy or department policy, that you could just reach out to your employer and say, I'm having these crazy thoughts and I don't feel normal, because they're going to look at you funny. And I hate to say it, but there's still a lot of agencies that look for a reason to fire you. So they don't want that liability. And it's sickening. But I think we've gotten a lot better. Those are far and few between. But I think the nonprofit approach for that. And then if you are diagnosed with it, seek some professional help, someplace that knows exactly how to deal with it and has the therapy on site, an outpatient program.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Last question. I would love for you to share with us if you don't mind, you were telling me before kind of what direction you're looking at going now with your career, and how faith is playing into all of this.
Yeah, so it's kind of sad. We've built this business over 8 years. We're financial advisors. It's a high-paced, very high-stress job, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go back to do that. And my wife's taking over the business, and we'll try to keep that running and hire some help and maybe look for some infrastructure. But I'd like to volunteer more with my church. And, it was amazing. I gave a small presentation at my church kind of on my health. They were all worried sick about me and praying for me. And it was amazing. I talked to them, and I don't have the percentage in my head, but it was overwhelming majority. I'd say 75% of the congregation raised their hand when I asked them if they knew of somebody in their family that had served in law enforcement or military, and it was overwhelming with that. But what really blew my mind, I asked, raise your hand if you know someone that's had a traumatic brain injury, and they did. Raise your hand if you know someone that committed suicide, and almost someone in every pew. And I gave this talk about how people get so desperate with these types of injuries and being misunderstood that they either lead to substance abuse, misguided, misdirected on their life, whether it be their finances because you can't make decisions, divorce, lose their home, lose their job because they're not performing at work, and they can't get disability because they don't have the correct diagnosis, and they get desperate and they kill themselves. And so I want to work in that capacity, and I would love to be able to volunteer my time in a pastoral role for emergency and crisis response for people dealing with just what I just said. I mean, there's a gap, and I want to devote whatever brain cells I can devote and whatever life God gives me left. I want to voluntarily try to get that information out there to help other people, because I can't stand to see another law enforcement officer take his life. I can't stand to see, I saw young people in that clinic, and it broke my heart, especially kids. And I can't stand to hear one more story about a child getting bullied on at school because they're not right, because they have a brain injury. It's got to change. So I want to be part of the change. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
I love it. That's beautiful. And I think the more awareness we get out there, and the more people like you who are doing such good things for people, I think that's going to be a huge blessing and lift everyone. So thank you for what you're doing, for not giving up, and for sharing your wisdom and hard-earned experience with us today.
Yes. And thank you for doing your regular job and your other job and your calling. Thank you. You have found your calling, and I pray that this reaches the right people, and I pray that your messages continue. And thank you for your newsletter, and thanks for letting me be part of it.
Thanks so much, Matt.
All right. Thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.